Are you all aware of a disease called HLH? This disease can be very fatal to your children if they have it. My niece was actually born with this disease. She was diagnosed before she turned 1 year old. We actually lost her about 3 times to this disease. So I researched on it and wanted to know a lot about it. So today I will talk to you about HLH. HLH is short for hemophagocytic lymphohistiocytosis. It's a very long name, so I'll just be abbreviating it for HLH. First, I would like to tell you a little bit about what HLH is. Then I would like to talk about some treatments. And last, I would like to talk about some foundations for the victims of HLH. HLH is a rare immune deficiency. You can compare it to cancer. It is a white blood cell count that is very high. It actually eats your red blood cells, and your white blood cells stick to your liver and your spleen. So it doesn't fight off any infection or anything, so your immune system is really, really low at the time. The disease can be genetic, or it can be caused by other bacterial infections, other diseases, other immunodeficiencies that you may contract while you're young, and all that. HLH is studied in Cincinnati, Ohio. That is the only place that it is studied. It is so rare that there's not a lot of money going to it, so they don't know a lot about this disease. There are also many different types, so they always try to focus on one type at a time, but that also does make it harder to discuss the disease and research it when there is so many different types. And now that I have told you a little bit about what it is, I'll tell you about some symptoms of it. You can have a fever, a very high fever actually, so high that it can send you into seizures. You can have a full body rash. You can have sudden blindness. Your red blood cells and your platelet count are really low because your white blood cells are eating them. You can have an enlarged spleen, very large lymph nodes. You can have difficulty with your coordination, and you can actually go into a coma. My niece was actually in a coma for 18 days straight while she was going through this. It mainly affects small children and infants because as you get older, your immune system builds up. Therefore, you can fight off more of this disease. So when you're a child, your immune system is low and it's harder to fight off a disease as it is. So when you have no immune system, you really can't fight off any infections at all. So now that I've told you a little bit about what HLH is, now I'd like to talk about some treatments that the people with this disease go through. Several types of antibiotics are given and antiviral medications. They're given for the infections that you get along the way that your body can't fight off. So you take the antivirals and the antibiotics so that you can help fight off those medications because your immune system isn't doing it for you. So anything to a common cold can be very severe with someone that has HLH actually. You also take many rounds of steroids. Steroids are to help suppress the immune system along the way on this journey. You have several rounds of chemotherapy. In chemotherapy, you can actually lose your hair. Chemotherapy is to knock down your immune system in hopes to rebuild a new one each time, and sometimes it doesn't always work. And last, a cell transplant is given, a bone marrow transplant. It's the same thing. What happens is you find a donor in the system if you're blessed enough to actually have a genetic match in the system. You actually take a transplant of someone else's cells and put them in your body, and it rebuilds a new immune system, and your body takes over those cells in hopes that you don't reject them. If the cell transplant works, you actually have the donor, the person, cells actually inside of your body, and it can cure you if it works correctly. So now that I've covered this fatal disease, finally I would like to talk about some foundations for some of the survivors that I've known. My sister actually talked to some of the parents of the survivors. Some survivors actually are living today. My nieces met them. They've played together. Some of their survivors are actually older now. They lasted so long with the disease. They had a really long journey. So their immune system built up as they got older, so they survived the disease, just like my niece did. As she got older, she got through it, and her immune system eventually built up after her transplant, and she survived. Now, some of the younger children that I am about to talk about are victims, and they have foundations that I would like to discuss. Two major foundations that I have are the Matthew and Andrew Akin Foundation. These two boys were brothers, and the parents had the gene that gave it to both of them, actually. They found out with their first son that they had it, and they had a second son, and they didn't know that he had it as well, so they were going through it with their first son, and then they decided to test their second son because he actually started having symptoms of the same signs. The boys actually did pass away 8 months apart from each other, so they actually lost both of their children to this disease. My sister has actually talked to the mother of them, and they now adopt, and they're going through it, but they actually set up this website for everyone to go to donate to help research the disease, and just to go and look at their life story, and it can impact a lot of lives. The second foundation that I have is called Liam's Lighthouse. He was actually a young boy. He was more of an infant when he, not an infant, but a toddler when he passed away, and that you can also go there to donate and learn more about his life on that website. So in conclusion, I have talked about HLH, hemophagocytic lymphohistiocytosis, and I have also talked about the treatments, and I've talked about some foundations for the victims of this disease. So I hope you are all now aware of a disease called HLH, and that you can identify it if your children ever have some symptoms of this, because around here where we live in the 4 states in Joplin area, they weren't aware of the symptoms and they had no idea what it was. My sister actually had to take her somewhere else in bigger cities, St. Louis, Kansas City, for them to actually diagnose her to see what she had. I just hope one day that they find a cure, a faster way to cure children with this disease, because there's a really high death rate for this disease. Some sources that I use for this are the Matthew and AndrewAkin.org, histio.org, rarediseases.info.gov, emedicine.medscape.com, liamslighthouse.org, and cincinnatichildrens.org. Those are some of the places that you can go to find out my information. Those are my sources. If you would like to see the victims and read more up on their stories, or actually donate money for the HLH research, you can actually go to the Matthew and AndrewAkin.org, or you can go to the liamslighthouse.org. Thank you.